Hi there. My name is Fitzraven. And before I say anything, I thank you and acknowledge you for giving your time and attention to this video, to watching it, to opening yourself up to the ideas that I'm about to share, and to applying them in your life. This is a privilege that I don't take for granted, and I cherish it. I am a professional coach. What does that mean? That means that I champion for people and support them to create the identity, the experience, and the results that they really want for their life and for their purpose. And the reason why I'm making this video is to offer you the distinction between coaching and therapy. And this is a distinction that is born out of my personal direct experience. So this is not an absolute statement. And I recognize that everyone has a different experience. This is my experience and the insight and the understanding that I've developed through my experience. And what has been my experience? Well, I experienced being in therapy for 5 years. I also studied social work and got a master's in social work. And I've also been coaching professionally for almost 5 years now, as well as have been getting coached professionally. So I've been on the receiving end of therapy. I've been on the receiving end of coaching, and I've also been a coach myself. So this is the experience that has given birth to the idea that I'm about to share with you. What is the difference between coaching and therapy? On a very superficial level, we can generalize it to say that therapy is past-oriented and coaching is future-oriented. That's very, very general. The psychotherapeutic community is very broad, and it includes many theories, many interventions, and many approaches. And it's also a very dynamic field. It's evolving, it's growing. To a large extent, though, the psychotherapeutic process is contextualized and defined and characterized by the exploration of the past. Past wounds, past injuries, beliefs that have become installed for you through those wounds and injuries, emotional reactions and stucknesses, looking at the past and trying to unravel and untangle yourself from it. To a large extent, that's what characterizes the therapeutic process. Coaching, on the other hand, is characterized by a look at the future. What is the future that you would love? What is the identity that you would love? And how would you love that to be expressed in the world? And what kind of results would you love that would fulfill on all of that? So on a very rudimentary level, one is looking behind you at stuff that's happened in the past. The other is looking ahead of you at the future, at what's possible. Now, as I said, it's really very much a generalization. However, to fine-tune that distinction a little bit more so that it's a little bit more subtle, here's what I would say. We're always, as a possibility, aware of our past while we look at our future. And we're always concerned with our future while we look at our past. There are two sides of a coin. Past is created by future. Future is created by past. And we're always cognizant of the one, even when we're immersed in the other. However, there's a very significant difference if I look at my future through my past, or if I look at my past through my future. Now, what do I mean by that? That means to say, there is a way of putting a stake in the ground in my past. Say, who am I? Well, I'm everything that my past has created me to be. I am my current identity, with all the idiosyncrasies, strengths, weaknesses, fears, failures, victories, hopes. I am the product of my past. This is who I am. This very moment, I have been brought to where I am through all of the moments that have already passed. Now, given I am that, given the past and the load that I carry from the past, what are the odds and the chances and the likelihood of me actually getting to create a future that I would absolutely love? When we put our stake down in the past, when we put our stake down in our current identity, which is born through all of our past, the options for our future become fewer and fewer and fewer. We're steeped in the kinesthetic experience of constriction, of limitation, of scarcity, of probability, based on past experiences. And so it kind of constricts our pupils and serves like a kind of blinders that just make it very, very difficult to become fully aware of and connected with, especially on a somatic level, radical possibilities in our future. So that's what I mean by looking at our future through our past. It's like our past is the view through which we look at everything. Why? Because it's what we know. Why? Because it's what has shaped who we've become. So it's like a pair of glasses. And now we're looking out at the future through this pair of glasses, through this prism that is entirely crafted out of the past. And the experience, as I said, becomes one of very constricted and limited possibility. When I identify with my past, when I believe that I have the fixed personality that I currently experience, which is really just accumulated from childhood, from adolescence, and from past experiences and associations and beliefs, then when I look out at my future, it just feels like a really tight space. I mean, I can imagine a little bit, I can contrive, I can conjure up some beautiful things that I would want for myself and try to get there. But it's kind of like trying to row your boat with the anchor down. In coaching, on the other hand, we look at the past through the future. What does that mean? That means we put a stake down in the future. We get creative. We get imaginative. We go out of our head where the ego lives and where our attachment to our current identity has such a strong hold on us. We drop into our hearts. We get connected with what would we love? Even if the mind says, well, that's ridiculous or that's impossible, or even if there are thoughts that limit that. Coaching is an opportunity for putting a stake down in the future of our life, for stating and declaring desires, dreams, identities that we would love that are completely non-linear to our current reality, possibly. And then we begin to build around that imagination. We begin to build around that creativity. And we begin to analyze our past and dissect it in such ways that we need to, such as to dissolve anything that has coagulated from the past and is now operating as some kind of blood clot, some kind of clot or some kind of blockage. So we look at our past through our future. We say, given what I would love to create, given the results that I want to produce, given the experience in life I want to have, given the impact I want to have, given the identity that I want to manifest in the world, given my purpose, let me go take a look now at my past and start really looking for, where is the past snagging me and interfering with that? Where is the identity that's past-based getting in my way, and how can I pull out its underpinnings, dissolve that stuff and evaporate it so that I'm actually free to live into a entirely non-linear future. So that's what I mean. That's a little bit of a fine-tuned idea. When I say in therapy is largely characterized by looking at the past, coaching is largely characterized by looking at the future, a more accurate or more fine-tuned idea would be there's a way of looking at the past through the future, right? Which is, I put my stake down, I put my stake in the ground of the future. I get out of my head and think in non-linear, imaginative, creative ways that are true to my heart. And then I take a look at what needs to be dissolved from my past because it's operating as a blockage. Versus identifying with my past, identifying with my current personality, believing that that stuff is fixed and I'm stuck and it's really very limiting and constricting, and trying to eke out just a little bit of freedom through that. So if you're still with me and watching this, I just want to say thank you so much again. This is very meaningful to me and moving. And it really takes something to be in this conversation with me, to really consider this. Open yourself up to this possibly new idea for you. And especially if you see it differently, and if you've had your own experience with therapy and with coaching, I'm inviting you to just set aside the way you see it and consider the issue from this new paradigm. Just as an experiment. Consider it from this paradigm. Not like this is like the absolute truth, or this is something that has to be agreed with or disagreed with, or like this is something that's right or wrong, but rather just consider it like experimentally from this paradigm. But rather just consider it experimentally from this paradigm and see what opens up for you. See what it creates access to. That would be a way that you would get the most value out of this. So let's add now a layer to that. Let's add a layer to that. If we drop a level deeper, right, away from this surface level distinction of looking at the past versus looking at the future, or even the more subtle version of, are we looking at our past through our future, or are we looking at our future through our past? If we drop a little bit deeper into identity, into the domain of our experience of ourself, something else comes up to the surface, which is, who are you? Who are you? Are you wounded, sick, or broken, and are in need of healing, medicine, and fixing? Or are you perfect, whole, and complete? We all have an idea about ourselves. I like to call it an orientation, a point of reference through which we experience our own self. And usually, our experience of ourself, which is based on our idea of ourself, is rooted in one of two camps. The camp of brokenness, sickness, and injury, or the camp of wholeness, perfection, and completion. The word therapy alone means medicine. In my experience, there is a context that's at play in the psychotherapeutic process. I'm broken. I'm wounded. I'm sick. I need fixing and healing. There's an identity of fragmentation. There's an identity of brokenness. Sure, the therapy promises to heal me, but the implication remains that I'm sick. Sure, the hope of the therapy is to fix me, but the implication on the level of identity is one of brokenness. It's implicit. But in many ways, the implicit is even more potent and defining than the explicit. Do you know why? Because the explicit needs to be said. That's why it's explicit. Whatever is brought into explication, whatever is stated or comes into articulation, it's because there's a need for it to come into articulation. What does not come into explicit articulation, what does not emerge into definite expression, stays implicit and is actually more decisive and more powerful because it doesn't actually even need to come into explicit articulation. So on the level of implication, which is even more defining, there's a strong context or identity of brokenness, of woundedness, and of sickness. In the paradigm of coaching, the way I have experienced it and the way I practice it, that's gone. You are not seen as broken, wounded, fragmented, sick. You are not seen as needing anything outside of your own self. You're seen as a divine expression. You're seen as a divine possibility. You're seen as perfect, whole, and complete. The only question is, what are the ways in which you desire and crave for that wholeness and that divinity to manifest and express itself in the world? And what are identities or attachments that you've inadvertently indulged in that interfere with that? So we can just dissolve that and remove that and get out of the way. So on the level of implication, in coaching, you're seen as perfect, whole, and complete, and as an actual divine expression. So this is a lot more subtle, a lot more nuanced, because we're not talking about what's explicit, we're talking about what's implicit. We're talking about that cornerstone of identity, of who you be, as it serves as the backdrop of the psychotherapeutic process versus the backdrop in the coaching process. And I've experienced this firsthand. The linear mind loves the therapeutic process because it promises hope and healing and fixing. But yet on the level of implication, on the level of my direct experience or direct knowingness of my own identity, there's a lot of brokenness that's secretly stuffed in there and snuck in there. In the coaching experience, there may not be a promise of anything, because there's no need for fixing or healing. You have the answers. You have the capacity. You are an unlimited possibility. So it's a paradoxical idea, because my coaches do support me, and I do champion for the people who are my clients. Right? But it's on a different level. It's in a different way. As a possibility, it's a further expression of our interconnectedness and oneness as human beings. So there's a way in which a person can experience needing someone else because they're broken. There's a way in which they can experience needing someone else because they're whole, and they want that wholeness to permeate through the totality of human consciousness. Those are very different. So, to recap and summarize this point, the difference, here's another difference on the level of being. In psychotherapy, there's often a cornerstone identity of brokenness. In coaching, the cornerstone identity is wholeness. This relates to another distinction, right? Are you a victim? Are you at the effect of circumstance? Are you needy and helpless? Or are you a creator? Or are you infinite potential? Or are you resourceful? Oftentimes, in a psychotherapeutic process, when you're looking at the past and processing it, you're inadvertently believing you're a victim of your past. You're at the effect of. Inside of a deep coaching process, you get to look at your agency in the matter all the way through. You begin to peel off that initial layer of the victim consciousness and begin to come into the creator consciousness and see your contribution to your experience, the way in which you see things, the way in which you interpret things. Responsibility. You begin to uncover more and more and more of the way in which you do have leverage, and possibly had leverage all along. Right? That's not to blame or condemn, but it's actually a source of power. Because if I can see more and more and more of my part in things, if I can see more and more and more the way in which my way of being, my ideas, my interpretations, my actions and inaction actually contribute to an experience of my past, I become more liberated because I get to discover myself as someone who has the capacity to create. I get to discover myself as someone with a tremendous amount of agency in my life. And as I grow that, I'm able to really create that new future that I'm out to create. So, these are some of the distinctions between the psychotherapeutic context and the deep coaching context. To recap, on the most surface level, one is characterized by the past, one is characterized by the future. On a more subtle level, one is when you have the stake down in the ground of your past and you're trying to eke out some future that's different than the status quo. The other is when you put your stake down in the ground of the future and you just look at the past to the extent that it needs to be looked at to dissolve and evaporate whatever is in the way of the created future. On a deeper level, it's on the level of identity. Am I needy because I'm broken, because I'm sick, because I'm wounded, because I'm fragmented, or am I actually whole and looking to express that? And the need for other people to support me along the way is really an expression of an underlying divine desire for all human beings to discover themselves as interconnected and all part of one greater whole. And are you a victim and at the effect of circumstance and past? Or are you a creator and do you have agency? And there's also higher levels than that as well, like more spiritual levels of like surrender and becoming one with life that become accessible through a profound coaching experience. So, why does this matter? Because it affects how you show up. Let's face it. If I am at the effect of my past, and therefore I become preoccupied with trying to free myself from the past. And I secretly see myself as a victim of it. And hopefully I'll try to eke out a little bit of a better future through this process. And it's kind of medicinal. Basically, what it amasses to is that it's a necessary evil. I mean, most people that I know, if they would be able to get everything that they need out of therapy in 2 sessions, they'd do it. They wouldn't spend 2 years or 20 years. Why? Because secretly, therapy is a necessary evil. I mean, if you broke your leg, right? If you would be able to get 1 shot and it would heal your leg, you'd do that, wouldn't you? All of us would, right? Anything that we perceive as a necessary evil, anything that we perceive as something that's obstructing our life, as something that's in the way, as something that's like a means to an end, we'd want to get over with as soon as possible. We'd want to invest the least as possible. But if you really get the possibility of coaching, that this is your opportunity to sit down at the canvas of your life and paint the most exquisite masterpiece ever. If you get that a coaching experience is an opportunity for you to sit down at that sheet, those blank sheets of paper with lines going across, and write your music, write your symphony, you would have everything else in your life revolve around that. That's called living from a creative place, from a proactive place. You wouldn't cancel it. You wouldn't come late. As a matter of fact, you'd clear loads of space for it before and after. Everything would revolve around that. Because that's the time and the place that you have created to dig and drill deep, 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 deep under the surface of your consciousness to mine the endless potential and the endless possibility that you are, and to give that gift to the world. Thank you for allowing me to share this with you. Thank you for absorbing this and listening to this. I love you. I'm championing for you. My name is Fitz. God bless you.